about learning all kinds of fun stuff for Van Halen.
Yeah, I have a
What
question about that. I know you do too, Don.
I hear you're doing a residency in Vegas.
Well, I've been playing with Sammy on and off for quite a while. I did Chicken Foot in 2012 or 13, and then I started doing gigs with him when I do gigs with him on here and there, and I was learning the Van Halen, Sammy Hagar, Montrose, and Chicken Foot, vocabulary, as they would say. And then now with this Best of All Worlds tour, and we're doing a residency in Vegas and doing. But we're doing a lot of Van Halen songs that Sammy doesn't always do, and bringing like songs like Amsterdam and Human Beings and things that brings the audience to hearing Van Halen songs I haven't heard for a long time. So Joe is being Eddie and I'm being Alex, basically.
I think Michael Anthony and Sammy Hagar should go bald too to match with Joe. That'd be the coolest fucking concept.
Well, and there'd be four bald brothers. Well, I always tell Joe, you're gonna play. I want you to play 5150, or I'll pick a real hard song. I says, come on. It's just that we look alike. Nobody will know the difference.
They look alike. It's crazy.
But I'm not gonna be playing guitar, that's for sure.
What's your favorite Van Halen song? When you think of the first one you go to in your mind, like when you think Van Halen.
There's too many. And I'll tell you why it's too many. When Sammy asked me to put the set list together for a show we did, I couldn't believe he asked me to do that. And I said, are you kidding? He said, nah, you do it. And I started looking at every single song you could start the show with. Can you imagine starting with, Pound Cake? God, or Top of the World, or Run Around, or, any of those guitar riffs could start. So every song is could be the beginning and the closing of, those shows. It's like when I played with Fogerty, every song was a familiar song.
I remember when you were talking about Right Here, how it was like a half beat off.
Oh, right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right now.
It starts off a 16th note off. A lot of the songs, Eddie would start things not on the beat like that. Well, that starts with keyboards. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 da 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 do da 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 do da 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 da, and da 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 da. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 da 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 da, or 1, 2, 3, 4 ba dum ba dum ba dum ba dum ba dum ba da da da. Run Around. That starts on the end of 4. Panama. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's everything starts, or a lot of the songs start off the beat. And Eddie would, I keep thinking of Eddie's smiley face going like, try to find the beat. And then he and Alex would work all these parts out together. Sammy explained to me they'd spend maybe a week together, one in front of the other, right there, creating all this stuff. And then Sammy would have to come in and then, create his parts on top. Very clever, very angular, extra beats, weird accents. Me and Joe just text each other about Amsterdam. I'm like, whoa, oh my God. This isn't like playing like the blues or like a Fogerty song or a Mellencamp song. It's just it's all kinds of wacky parts that they spend a lot of time creating, with each other.
You have to learn a bunch of stuff because we were texting back and forth about charting. Let's say you're constrained for time, and I asked Brent Fitz this a couple weeks ago in Vegas when he was getting ready for a Brother Kane gig. Do you let's say, are you flying in a plane, you're listening, you're charting it out, and then when you get there, boom, it's go time. Do you get any time to actually practice, or is that just sound check is your practice?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, when I had to do that emergency fill-in for Jason Bonham when he was his mom got real sick and he had to go see her. All of a sudden I get a call, you got to get on a plane in 23 hours. Now I'd gotten a little heads up, but that was 45 pages. Very, very, very detailed charts. I mean, every note written out. And, I flew to Cincinnati from LA, landed at 6 in the morning. I didn't even know if I was going to be playing that night because it was possible that Jason wasn't leaving that night, and then I'd watch him play, which I'd already seen one show at the Forum. And so at least I got I saw that, wow, these arrangements are different. So at least I knew that. But I mean, I had to play his drum set. I had 2 hours to adjust his drums so that I could, because I could read and hit things like this. And it's all muscle memory. I know exactly how to get the job done at this point in my career. It's not casual. It's extremely intense, extremely focused, and you just do the best you can do. So that was that part of it. And then, like, count off, there's click tracks and there's pads and just all kinds of stuff to deal with. Then there's the flow of the show. It's not like you just, hey, we're going to do this song now. It was a show. So when I got that call, I had 23 hours. I said, I want a board tape and I want a video of the show. And all I did was watch it, and write everything out. And then I discussed everything with these guys. We had 90-minute sound check, basically. There was no way we could go through the whole thing. No way. And so when I do intense shows, and when I've done all these intense TV shows that I've done, like the Kennedy Center Honors, or a show like, where I'm playing with 24 artists, when everybody goes to dinner and I've got like an hour and a half, I practice by myself the count off, start playing, go to the end, do the end, adjust my metronome or my drum machine to the next. I make sure that all the charts are lined up with all the tempos in my machine. And I do that 2 or 3 times, make sure, so that, because we've never run the whole show. And so I practice counting off the beginning, switching the tempo while I'm playing, go to the end, count off the next song, and do the same thing all the way through the show for about 45 minutes. Run in, get dressed. If I'm lucky, I get food in. And then we got 14 cameras shoot and they're recording it. I cannot mess up. And then I also write on my charts the flow of who's coming on stage, going off, who do I look at, who tells me when to count off. I go through the entire flow from song to song to make it seem like it's seamless.
Wow.
That is insane.
You have to know what questions to ask to then solve the problem.
Kenny, is there a drummer that you look up to? Like, if there were a couple drummers that you're like, these are like the gods of drumming, who would they be?
About 1,000 of them.
Really?
Come on. I could list 1,000 great drummers. What? John Bonham, Mitch Mitchell, Dave Grohl. I could go on and on and on. Mike Portnoy from Dream Theater, Danny Carey from Tool, the drummer from Anthrax. I could go on, drummer from Megadeth, Ringo Starr, Charlie Watts. Who's better? Who's better? I ain't even gotten into Buddy Rich, Elvin Jones, Philly Joe Jones, all the great, Louis Bellson. I could go on and on and on and on. They're all brilliant.
What do you think about when you're added to a list like Rolling Stone's top 100 drummers? How does that make you feel when you're listed in a Rolling Stone article?
Well, I definitely, I felt grateful I was in that list. That's a pretty impressive thing to be in. And of course, it's subject to the person who's putting that list together.
Yeah.
I have a phrase that goes, I'll never be as great as I want to be, but I'm willing to spend the rest of my life trying to be as good as I can be. And that comes from a humble position of understanding that you're a human being. And I know I'll never be as great as I want to be. I know I won't. I'm not a robot. But it's like a running back in football. These guys are monster athletes, but they don't score touchdowns every time they get the ball. Sometimes they do, and then sometimes 5 yards, 2 yards, -2, fumble, break their leg in preseason. And they come back, and this is the takeaway. They come back because they friggin' love football. It's their life. That's it. And me, even at my young age, I'm exactly the same way as I was when I was starting to do this. I am not a retiring guy. I'm a pit bull. I'm like a Michael Jordan, or it's like I'm obsessed with being great, and I know I'll never be as good as I want to be, but I don't mind trying. I cross the T's, I dot the I's. I know how to get from A to Z. And sometimes you don't have enough time. You do your best, but I understand the process of how to be great on a daily basis.
I have a really quick question for you. I actually had the opportunity to sit down with Kenny once before, and we were going through his song story, and I was learning a little bit about where he came from. And you started basically classical drumming, correct? And then you went no. Okay.
Marimba.
I eventually did, but
Okay.
no. Oh, that's right, Dean. You found that. That was brilliant. You found that. That was brilliant. No, I saw the Beatles on TV. Look, I grew up. My parents were from New York. The turntable was jazz, classical music Broadway shows. But I was seeing jazz drummers from like Stan Getz, and that was I'm spacing his name. I was seeing all the big jazz drummers. My parents were into the big band stuff and jazz, and Buddy Rich and all that stuff. But then when the Beatles came on, the Ed Sullivan Show, and I saw that, I went, whoa! That was the millisecond I realized my purpose in life. I didn't know who they were, where they were from, but I said, Mom, I want to do that. And who are those guys? She said, well, they're the Beatles. I went, well, I want to be in the Beatles. I want to do that. And so call them up and get me in the band. And, that drummer can stay, but I want to play with them. And so I said, forget the piano. I'm playing drums now. I mean, it wasn't coming from here. It was coming from here. I went, I got to do that. It ignited me. It was the greatest thing that I'd ever seen. So I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know how to go about it, and my parents didn't call the Beatles up, and they didn't buy me a drum set. So I'm like, what do I do? How do I do this? I knew that I wanted to do it, but I didn't know how to get there. So they saw I was going crazy, buying records. I'd get on my little bike and buy 45s. And they finally bought me a snare drum and a cymbal. I started banging on that stuff, and I started a band called the Alley Cats. At age 10, in the Alley Cats, we played 5 Beatles songs. And I would dream I was in the Beatles and grow my hair and girls going crazy over me, which of course the hair thing never quite worked out. But, I was into it so much. That fire and that passion has never left me since. So all the way through, 10 years old until I graduated high school, I was always in the best bands and self-taught. And then there was some kid getting better than me in my little town of Stockbridge, 3,000 people. And I said, Tommy, what are man, you're getting really fast. Well, I'm taking lessons from this percussionist from the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and their summer festival was 3 miles from my house. So I went, well, I'll do that. This guy, this was like taking lessons from a Marine surgeon. This was like, there was no entitlement, laziness. If you didn't show up and you weren't prepared, get out of here. And so he started me on mallets. I mean, the first lesson, I'm not even in his house. And he goes, what's your name? I said, Kenny. Kenny what? I went, Kenny Aronoff. What have you prepared for me today? I'm like, what? Well, do you have a mallet piece? And I went, I don't even know what mallets are. Because see, in high school, I wasn't part of the marching band. I wasn't part of the high school band because I had a rock band. And so why would I want to do that when I was playing, in clubs at, 13 years old? So he said, well, have you prepared a timpani piece for me? And I went, I never played timpani in my life. And he looked at me like, well, what are you doing here? What do you play? I went, well, I play drum set. Oh, drum set. So we go downstairs. He puts on Blood, Sweat, and Tears spinning wheels. Well, I had been practicing to that, jamming with my headphones with the stereo. In about 30 seconds, he ripped me off the drums and pointed to a practice pad, stripped me down from the beginning, and that's where my legit training really started. So I did about 2 years with him, good enough to get into a school, University of Massachusetts, which had an okay music program. And I spent that first year 24/7 trying to catch up and do basically in 1 year what I should have done in high school, or 9, 10, 11, and 12. And that's how, and then there was this cellist. She was pretty hot. And I said, what are you doing this summer? She said, I'm going to Aspen. I said, what's Aspen? She says, well, Aspen's an elite music program run by Juilliard. So Indiana was number 1, Juilliard's number 2, Eastman's number 3, as far as classical. And the reason why, by the way, I went and started studying classical music in college is because back then there was no school of rock. I mean, you just either move to a city and try to make it. I was not ready to do that. I felt like I needed to get more education. So I picked music as my education, but it was classical. And I always played in rock bands. And while I was at UMass, Eastman was 5 hours up the road in Rochester. I auditioned, got in, but they didn't have room for a transfer student. In other words, I qualified, but they didn't have room. Now I hear about this summer program at Aspen run by Juilliard. I'm thinking, well, I'm going to go there and she'll be there, which would be cool, but maybe I can transfer to Juilliard. I audition with tape and, timpani, mallets, multiple percussion, and snare drum. I don't hear from anybody. Last day of school, I decided, all right, I'm going to study with the percussionists from the Boston Symphony Orchestra. I got an Allman Brothers band I'm going to play this summer. I'm going to come back to UMass. The day I leave to go home, I went, I forgot my mail. I drive back, get my mail out. I went, I got a check from somebody. Open it up. You've been accepted to Aspen. 2 weeks later, I'm in Aspen, the worst percussionist there. These kids were like so advanced. They were the elite. The teacher who taught there ran the percussion department at Indiana University, the number one school of music in the country. And I demanded an audition. He told me, no, come back in January. I said, no, I want to audition this summer right here. He said, no, come back in January. I said, no, I want to audition right here, and I want to go to Indiana from Aspen, Colorado. I want to go to IU. And he went, wow, okay, this guy's serious. So I auditioned and I got in, and I worked my way up through the ranks from the worst. I mean, on Friday and Saturday nights, people were out partying. I was practicing till midnight. Then I'd go out, and I just caught up and caught up. And every year in the spring, I auditioned to the number one most elite student orchestra in the country, if not the world, run by the Boston Symphony Orchestra at their summer festival, Tanglewood, 3 miles from my house. I auditioned the first year, strike out. Auditioned the second year, strike out. I auditioned the third year, strike out. I go back a fourth year and I get in. Only 7 percussionists in the whole world are in that program at one time. And I'm working with Leonard Bernstein, Aaron Copland, Sergio Ozawa, all the conductors that conducted, the Boston Symphony Orchestra. I do one more year at IU and I get into the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra. And here is the takeaway from this story. I turned it down. And everyone's like, what? My parents, they're going, we invested all this money in you to do exactly this. I turned it down because I still wanted to rock. I wanted to be in the rock band. So
Right.
that I spent 4 years. I spent a year practicing 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, studying with a drummer from New York, a drummer from Boston, moved to Indiana, started my own band. After the business model was you write songs, you get a record deal, they pay for you to make a record, you go on tour, sell records, and maybe they give you more money, do it again and again and again until you become big. Well, we never got a record deal. And 1 week from leaving, you guys probably know the story. 1 week before I was going to move to New York, I'm having lunch with this girl who asked me what I was doing, and I said, I'm going to go to New York, try to make it. She says, oh man, you're going to kill it. And then she mentioned this guy who has a record deal, who's on this new platform or this new network called MTV. He's got songs on the radio, and it was Johnny Cougar. She said he had just fired his drummer the night before. They'd just come off tour. And I went, bing, bing, bing. Oh my God. Radio, records, touring, TV. Oh my God, this is what I want to be doing. So I went right to a payphone, called up Mike Wanchek, said, hey, Mike, this is Kenny. We knew each other. I said, I heard, you might be looking for a drummer. Anyway, I ended up auditioning 2 weeks later. 5 weeks later, I'm in the studio in California trying to make Nothing Matters from What If It Did, and I got fired after 2 days. And I didn't understand this. I didn't understand how to serve the song. I didn't understand how to serve the artist. I didn't understand how to be a great drummer for that guy or for that band. I didn't understand that it's not about me, it's about we.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand it's not, I got to be the right drummer. And this is something I realized later was that the purpose of a drummer or any session musician making a record, when you're talking about radio, the purpose is to get the song on the radio to be number one. It's not about me. If it means don't play, whatever I can do to get that song on the radio to be number one. That is the North Star. That's my trajectory. That's my goal. And ironically, 2 years later, I'm on the number one hit single, Jack and Diane. After getting fired, 2 days after making Nothing Matters from What If It Did, I thought my whole world was falling apart. And 2 years later, I had learned when I got fired on Nothing Matters from What If It Did, I had learned, I got to try to be a great drummer for John Cougar, and the way he writes music. And that's what started to get the wheels spinning. And the ironic thing is, the first day, I'm going back to it, first day at IU, my mom came out, and me and my mom and the professor who ran the percussion department walking around, and my mom's like, "Hey, Mr. Gaber, can he make a living hitting drums?" And then she goes, "I mean, he's even talented enough to have a career in music." She looked at him and went, "Mrs. Aronoff, I have no idea. It's up to him. Ask that question in 10 years." About 3 years ago, I went, I wonder what 10 years was after that day. 10 years to 1 month, 10 years in 1 month, Jack and Diane was #1.
Wow.
So that guy he knew, dude, it's up to him.
So I'm curious, in listening to you talk, so right now I'm actually working on a documentary, and one part of it was inspired or takes part actually 1 year ago from right now when all the stuff around the Guess Who was happening. And I remember, Gary Peterson was getting attacked on Facebook. People were leaving comments out there, he's just a drummer, as if that wasn't important. So
Right.
there's that aspect is actually what I'm working on right now, the documentary.
Yeah.
Don went and spent some time with Gary a couple of weeks ago. It's one of those statements where it's like, it's insane to say that, especially when you listen to everything that you've gone through and how important the drummer is on so many different levels. But have you ever heard that statement around you or within earshot?
Well, I mean, people, especially now with the internet, people have opinions, I ignore them. I don't respond. I ignore them. How could I ever possibly please everybody? I used to hear, especially when I was in the Mellencamp band, like, I don't get Kenny. What's the big deal about Kenny? What's so, and remember Ringo Starr and
I was
Charlie
going to ask you
Watts.
about that.
Yeah, they used to take. I was one of them when I was like, listen, when I was a kid, and I was listening to Buddy Rich, even though I loved the Beatles and the Stones. I was, well, that guy can't play because look at Buddy Rich, with the most ridiculous, abnormal technique, and I didn't understand enough about, you know, Ringo Starr is as great as Buddy Rich in the Beatles, and Charlie Watts is as great as Buddy Rich in the Stones. It's the right person understanding how to play in that environment. I mean, think about it. Teams win Super Bowls and World Series and Stanley Cups and NBA titles, not individuals. And these great coaches and general managers cherry pick players to fit into their system that will help the group of players win the Super Bowl or the title. And so I didn't know any of that. I didn't understand it. So when somebody it criticizes somebody, and they've obviously done great in that band, they don't. My feeling is they don't understand the value of that person in the band, and it's not just. It's not just the part they came up with, the fact that they came up with it. It's that they knew what to do. There's so many things that they contributed to make that band sound great on record and on tour.
Yeah, that's how I feel. There's so many different roles that it's not just the beat; they can be the glue, the personality that holds the band together. Yeah, it was a fascinating statement that when I was reading it, I kind of took it to heart and thought, yeah, I'm gonna have to do something about that statement. So here's where we're at.
That you could take that into any genre. You could take it into sports. You could take it into business. People going like, why is that person there? Well, that person is there because that person is motivating the team, motivating everybody. Or that's the person that has the reasoning. Somebody's going like, what if like whatever the boss is of a band, let's say it was like Aerosmith, and Steven Tyler goes, that song stinks. But somebody in that band's going, no, it doesn't. No, you're not seeing it right. And then they go at it, but then Steven Tyler defers to that person in the band, and the song becomes their biggest hit ever. So that person in the band, let's say it was Joey Kramer, the drummer, that moment in time was crucial for that band.
Let's be honest, Jack and Diane. Without that, it's a great song, but without that drum breakdown in the middle,
Well, yeah,
it's not the same. It's not the same song.
Well, check this out. I mean, that song wasn't even going to be on the record. It was done. We did not know how to arrange it. It was just a cute little folk song. And, I walked in one day, and the co-producer, Don Gaiman, had this metal box. I went, Don, what's that? He goes, oh yeah, the Bee Gees are using it next door. It's kind of the new thing. It's a new technology. But I said, what is it? He says, Lin One drum machine. I went, drum machine? They replaced drummers. I said, what are we going to use it for? And he goes, on that song, Jack and Diane, we don't know what to do with it. And at that moment, I went, dude, I'm telling you, Dean, that was a pivotal moment where I went, it was like a fight or flight moment. This was my DNA coming out. I went, well, I'm going to program it. And I call it, I didn't know, I was just trying to survive. But back then, I look back and I go, that was kind of an adapt or die moment. Adapt or die to stay relevant. I went, well, I just grabbed it and I went, well, I'm going to program, I'm going to do it. I want to be part of this new technology. So I basically programmed kind of what I was playing. I got the manual and I started programming what I was playing, added a few extra things and gave it back to them. And I started thinking, in the lounge, I was like, man, what's happening? Am I in the horse and buggy business? And the car showed up and we're going out? I mean, I was literally freaked out. I was like, I was young. I thought, is this the end? And then all of a sudden, John's going, hey, Aronoff, get in here. We need a drum thing, a drum solo. Right there after the second chorus, I'm going, on a ballad? I'm like, oh my God, I'm going, and I'd been fired 2 years before. So then I go, oh my God, I got to save the song to save my career. And I'm excited. I'm on the record, but I'm like, I could get fired again. And I thought, I got to come up with a solution. And obviously I did, but it was on the spot. And the story is more lengthy than that, but man, it was not.
Actually, that is a really good point I was thinking about from just like an energy, a personal internal energy perspective. You got fired. So you fast forward now, you're back in the seat. And was there that feeling of risk versus, being a little bit more conservative? Wow, do I really want to take a risk and do something different and get fired again? Or do I just, play it safe?
Well, to be completely truthful, I was just hoping I'd come up with something. They'd go like this. I was like desperate. So while we were getting drum sounds, I had a lot of time because we wanted to get these big drum sounds. And I'm thinking, okay, serve the song. How can I get this on the record? So my first opening thing is boom, blam. I actually stopped after I did that. So the machine goes, do, 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 ga, do, do, da, boom, blam. I thought, I'll make an entrance real simple, like an explosion. Like, here I am. And I stopped. That was it. And I looked in the control room looking for validation. And everybody's thumbs were up. That's awesome. And I'm thinking, I still got my job. I'm like, and so I thought, well, everybody goes down. So I thought I'll go up. But I hit a dead end. And when they said, come in, I was freaking out. I thought I'm going to get fired again. This is it. You're going home. You're getting replaced. And I had half the people telling me what to play and the other half telling me what not to play. Nobody knew what to tell me to play. And that's when the light went off in my head. I went, dude, you're on your own. You got to figure this out. So I left the room and I stood and looked at my drums and went, man, this is like being in the World Series and it's full count. And if you hit a home run, you win the World Series for everybody. Strike out, you're the loser and you could get fired. That's what it felt like. And I'm like, I'm walking to the drums. I'm going like 40 feet away. I'm like, what are you going to play, Kenny? And I'm 30 feet out. I have no idea. I'm like, dude, you're going to lose your job again. I'm freaking. I get to the drums and I sit down and I look at them and I'm grabbing my sticks and I go, all right, I can't come up with a new idea. I don't have any ideas. So I thought, well, I'll just do what I've already been playing, but kind of like rework it a little bit. It'd be like if you had furniture in your room and you go, this furniture sucks. You got two choices, get rid of it or maybe rearrange it so it looks cool. That's what I did. I basically just started to fill like Eddie Van Halen, 1/8 note later. I went boom, blam, instead of going boom, blam, one, I went boom, blam, one, all offbeats. Same rhythm, and they're all going, yeah. So then, I finished the fill up and then I was just so grateful that it made it on the record. So what happened, they released Hurt So Good. They released Hurt So Good first, it went to number 2. Now you remember, radio in the old days, they'd play every song on the radio. People call up and go, hey, we like that song. So they go, record label, and radio, they released that song that everybody liked. And Jack and Diane, and I mean, Hurt So Good. We had a video. It was on MTV. John was the new thing. It went to number 2. Eye of the Tiger was number 1. There was no way we were going to blow Eye of the Tiger out because Rocky 1 had just come out and they were co-promoting each other. So Jack and Diane, I mean, Hurt So Good stays up there, way up there for number 2, starts to come down a little bit, maybe 3, 4. And they did the testing again, and everybody wanted Jack and Diane, and they released it. And it shot right to number 1, and Hurt So Good stayed in the top 10. So now, who are these guys from Indiana with 2 songs in the top 10? And I explain to people, you have to understand, you're competing with Elton John, the Rolling Stones, Sting, the Police, Tom Petty, who's ever big. Billy Joel, they're all trying to be in the top 10. We have 2 songs in the top 10. A bunch of Indiana hillbillies. And so all of a sudden, man, that's what completely, John's career completely blew up. And mine was like, who's playing drums in that band? And that was
A stupid question, but as a guitarist, yeah, I learned a long time ago. I loved learning many of Vivian Campbell's guitar solos. And what I came to figure out is he comes in a lot of times, he's right behind the beat. So it creates this kind of like swing, this very sultry type of swing when he's going to the lead. And to hear you talk about being just off the beat and then Jack and Diane, is that what's happening? Is it creating that kind of just swing that?
No, in that particular, I know what you're talking about. You talk about guitar player that'll sit back behind the beat.
Yes.
That's different. Like Tony Iommi, when I play with him, he'll sit fat. Joe Satriani will sit fat to the beat, which is so cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
This is literally starting a beat later.
Okay.
And it made it more kind of syncopated and angular, but yet a rhythm you've heard, but it was starting on a different place, which made it so you're using the same, let's say the same words, but just moving them around differently. You know, the first word, now the third word, it's familiar, but it sounds different, but yet familiar. And it's, oh man, I mean, remember I said the trajectory and the North Stars to get the song to be on the radio, to be number 1, and here I am, really green at making records, and 2 years later, I've got a number 1 hit single. I mean, that was the beginning of a very long road up to that point of, you know, struggles and challenges and setbacks. But here's what I always tell people. When you live your life by your deepest desires or your purpose or your truth or your passion, whatever you want to call it, like I was because I saw the Beatles, that is the fuel that will help you overcome those horrible setbacks and obstacles you're going to run into that would make people give up and walk away. But if this is what you got to have, this is what I need, I got to do this, then you just persevere and push through. I mean, that's what Michael Jordan, I just saw his documentary again. Oh my God, he lost.
That's good.
Oh my God. You remember when he got into baseball and he comes back, and, you know, it took him a while to get back into, I think he lost the last game of that season, and the trainer said, hey, dude, you know, if you need me, call me, I'm around. He says, yeah, I need you tomorrow. Let's start tomorrow. And then he gets this acting gig for like a Bugs Bunny and Looney Tunes. He says, I'll do it, but I need a basketball court and a gym. And he built him one inside. This gets heavy. This is so badass. So Michael Jordan, he's working from 6 to 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on the movie. What does he do from 6 to 9 p.m.? He calls all his NBA friends to come, and they play 3 hours of basketball every day. And then afterwards, he lifts weights. And you know what he was doing? He was preparing for game 1 of the next season. Not only was he brilliant for training, but he's playing against his competition for next year. He knows every player he's going to play. He said, I'll see you, and I'm going to kill you. I'll see you, and I'm going to crush you. I'll see you, I'm going to beat you. That is like Viking. I think that's so badass.
And, you know, wasn't it that he wanted to go to UVA, but they rejected him. So he went to UNC. So
yeah. Well, apparently, yeah, I know he became great in the NBA. He was okay in college, not great in high school, but this guy had that fire, that desire, fight or fight. There's no fight or flight, and I relate to that. I mean, that's like, oh my God, 12 hours of filming, 3 hours of NBA level basketball, and then lifting weights. He's my hero. Hero. I love it. So like tonight, after we get off, I'll get some dinner. Probably at 10:30, I'll start a 2.5 hour practice routine on a drum pad, running through the Van Halen, Sammy Hagar stuff, drilling. And when I'm tired, I'll go, too bad. That's where I know how to get from A to Z. And the only thing that'll stop me is if I think it's going to hurt my health.
Right.
And like I said, I'll never be as good as I want to be. But I'm going to be more prepared by doing this than if I don't. And there are no excuses. You just have to own it. I mean, you just do the best you can and just stay focused on your trajectory and how to get there.
That's great advice, especially for the young musicians out there. And there are tons of them if you're on TikTok or any of those other places you're seeing. But some of them are so good and are barely getting any eyes on them. It's almost surprising. Kenny, I have a question for you. We're kind of, we're working behind the scenes, trying to figure out a way that we can give artists a better life and a better time in their industry. If there was one thing that you'd say is missing or one thing that you'd like to see changed about the industry, what would it be?
Well, let's start with the person. You want to get better? Work harder.
Okay.
There is no success does not land in your lap, and you're not born successful.
Amen.
If you can't do something, work harder.
Amen.
Double, triple, quadruple. It's RPS, the repetition of any skills or preparation for success. Don't ever make excuses. There are no excuses. Just work harder. It's like someone told me the other day, they were in a meeting and somebody said, blah, 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 to this person. They say, that's not in my job description. I went, you are a loser.
Yeah.
They were looking for an excuse. So what? The guy just asked you to do something. All right. The other person said, what can I do to help? I'm not, that other person, you're going to get thrown out. So what would I want to change in the music business? Well, the music business is like any business. Like I said, the horse and buggy business, think how they must have felt when all of a sudden they went out. But the music business has changed, and it does. I mean, when I was a kid, it went from LPs to cassettes to, 8 tracks to CDs to streaming, downloading, and then now YouTube is the biggest music platform in the world, and music's free. So the advice I give, well, I haven't answered your question. What would I want to see different? Well, I wish if this is not going to happen, but I would love to see in the music business where, you have to pay for music, where you actually, when I go to dinner, I don't get it for free. When I get out on an airplane, I don't get it for free. When I go to the grocery store, I don't get it for free. When I go, you know what I mean? You pay for gas, and all of a sudden, music's free. And that made a lot of people lose money, a lot of people not make money, a lot of people, it affected the entire music industry. I would love to see that come back. It's not going to come back because once something's free, that's it. So I think don't wait for the music industry to change. If you love playing music and that's what makes you feel good mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, then you got to figure out a way to do that. If you have to have 4 jobs to do the thing that you love the most, then you do that. You have to. Otherwise, you're going to be a miserable, unhappy person. What's the point of that? So it's just reshaped, and you have to adjust and adapt whatever it takes. Because as we're talking, it's changing. It's moving in a different direction already.
Where do you see music going?
I don't think
If
music.
you've gone through all these stages, the 8 tracks and the albums to the cassettes, the CDs to the now streaming, what's next? What do you think is next? I mean, how much smaller can music get?
No, it's not gotten smaller.
Smaller and freer.
The pie used to be, what were the things when I was a kid that were exciting? All right? There was sports, World Series, the Super Bowl. There was music, most of the pie. The Wizard of Oz, Christmas, Trick or Treat, Halloween. You know what I mean? There was only a few things. Now it's like a million slivers. You got the iPhone, you got, information everywhere. You got video games, you got technology. So many things are coming at you. Where me, it was music and a couple of those other things.
Right.
That's the big difference now. So how am I going to get somebody's attention? Also, so where's music going? Music's not going anywhere, but it's not the, it's not maybe the top of the list for a lot of people now because there are other things that are as stimulating to other people as music was to a lot of people back when I was a kid because there weren't that many, there was no Netflix. There was, it's like music was the greatest thing in town. It was the greatest thing in our life. It made us feel so good. And, you had to pay for the record and there was no MTV. You couldn't watch it on TV except for Ed Sullivan and occasionally a guest on like the Johnny Carson show or something. So you had to go to concerts. And so it's all been sliced down. So I think music's not going to go anywhere. It just is, it's maybe not as important to some people as it used to be. And it's not the number one thing, in people's lives as it used to be. Very important, and I can't put an actual percentage on it, but there's a lot of competition with music. But there's nothing like music, though, so it's not going to go away because music becomes a soundtrack to people's lives. What were they hearing when they were in second grade, and third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, or when you were out on a date or something? And I remember that song. I mean, they're not going to sit there. Maybe people will go like, "Oh, that girl I just married." I'll never forget when we played that video game. Well, maybe, but music is an undefinable thing that makes people feel emotions. I guess video games do, but it's just not. It's music is different than that, so it's not going to go anywhere. It just maybe has a different. It's always changing into a different role for people's lives, and I don't know where it's heading. I have no idea. I think it's always going to be around. It's just going to be, going to keep shaping and morphing and changing.
You find it interesting that, like, in my world, I guess this is my purview, the bands that I knew in my youth are coming back onto the scene right now, and they're doing sellout shows, like the Eagles at the Sphere, for example. Sellout after sellout after sellout after sellout. I mean, man, how do we get the people of today to love it as much as we used to?
Well, I don't
Or
know.
get
I think they do. I was talking with a guy the other day who's in his 30s, and he was talking about how the music he loves and how he associates it with movies that he grew up with. And he talked about it with the same level of passion that I did.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is, nostalgia is a powerful product. And I think every generation will go through that phase where suddenly it becomes about nostalgia. And this is what I run into at Classic Rewind. Bob, Buckman and I, we have this conversation a fair amount where I talk about all this really cool new music you guys have heard me talk about that's coming from these classic rock bands. The new stuff is really good, should be pushed. And what he says is nobody cares about new music from classic rock bands because it's the nostalgia that's got the power.
Of course, yeah. I mean,
And it's a shame because there is some really good new music out there.
I know it's like I said, a lot of people competing for the people's hearts and minds. There's different things that grab their attention, and I mean, oh man, there's so many examples of how the whole thing changed when and yeah, I mean these bands and what's going to happen when the Eagles and like now Aerosmith is retired, and a lot of these bands is Led Zeppelin. You can't see Led Zeppelin play. You can't see Cream play. You can't see these, but their music still goes on. Still, music is still great. Foreigner, I was doing John Fogerty, and Foreigner opened up for us, and there wasn't one original member, but there were musicians up there, and people came to see the songs. It's one of those bands. Those songs are so great. People were like, "I don't care. I want to see a band perform my favorite songs." And I really don't know what's next. I just know that music's going to be around. But I mean, look at Taylor Swift does huge business. And she is the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or the Eagles to a huge bunch of generations of people. That's their nostalgia, or Katy Perry, or
This is my Taylor. Taylor's going to be eligible for the Rock Hall in 5 years.
she's what?
She's going to be eligible for Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 5 years.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, she's classic pop now, but we don't call her that.
Yeah. I mean, that is the thing. I mean, things change. I mean, things change, and that's just what it is, It's amazing how, but, okay, not everybody listens to Beethoven, but it sure is unbelievable. It's like nobody can compare. I mean, the Beethoven, the Mozart, the Bach, Stravinsky and Rachmaninoff, and these
Wagner.
Wagner. I mean, there's nothing like it, and it exists. It's just not. It's not like selling out Madison Square Garden. You know what I'm saying? That used to be the music scene, and so now, so yeah, the Eagles and all these great bands will never. The musicals will be around. Zeppelin will always be around. Beatles will always be around. The Stones passed, but things change, man. Things change. I remember when rap came on, it was like I literally thought it was going to be just a fad in and out, but it never went away. It became the soundtrack to so many people's lives and a new way of expression. Or, yeah.
You hear intro to a song, and so many times they'll say, "What song is this?" Right? There's something about the generations. You go 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. To what Dean was talking about nostalgia, but I think even kids are locking into the fact that that time period was so unique of the creativity, the instrumentation, the melody, the harmonies. Where in this recent time, people have gotten away from that. When you look at the Billboard charts, it's all individual artists. There's no bands, there's no groups listed in the charts. And I think you're starting to see even a younger generation clamoring for bands, groups, things that meaningful lyrics, things that they can relate to. And I think that resurgence is coming back. And I'm seeing it more and more of, we might talk about our generation keeps longing for that, but the younger generation is looking for it. And that's why bands are going to start to come out that sound like what we grew up with. And you'll see the cyclical thing.
Well, see, the big thing with the bands you're talking about in the past, it was a lifestyle. We literally, the business model was get together as a band, maybe live in a band house, which I did. You live and breathe in the whole thing. But you also saw how you practice your instrument night and day, write songs night and day. You're going to get with the best musicians and get in a band, and you will get signed because people are signing, and there's money because people are buying records. And then you'll get in the big studio, and then there's money to put you on tour and pay for the buses, pay for the crew, and pay for everything, hotels and travel, all this stuff. And it was happening. It's real. You just hear they just got signed. They just got signed. And then you realize, we spent 6 months working on songs. Not good enough. We have to start again. But there was an end game to it. And so people were like, okay, let's do this. Well, are people getting in band houses and practicing and working up songs for 6 months to a year and practicing every day as a band? With Mellencamp, we practiced like 11 to 5 and 7 to 11, 5 days a week. I mean, it was like, that's what you do to get good. And we weren't great, but we became great because we put in the time. But there was an end game to it. We could go like, well, we're going to get on the radio because we can afford, or John can afford to have a lawyer, a manager, and the manager and the label, they would spend money. They believed in them and put money and invest in them. And eventually they made a lot of money off them because they're making 80, let's see, the labels are making 82 cents on the dollar or 85 cents on the dollar, depending on the deal. And if there's a big hit, they're going to make a lot of that money back end more to invest in other bands. That whole business model, except for, bands like like a Taylor Swift, who's obviously selling a lot of records and selling a lot of tickets. And I don't know how she's slicing the pie, but yeah, I mean but in general, we had, oh my God, you know the story. The Eagles didn't just become the Eagles and make it. There's so many crazy stories about how bands almost didn't make it, but they stayed in the game and they busted their asses like 24/7, and then they made it. It's a whole different business model. It's a different thing. People may be craving for this stuff, but you can't substitute for the work that you have to put in to be great at anything. It's just the way it is. There's no shortcuts. You can get lucky once. To sustain it, you have to be badass. You have to put in the hours. The 10,000, the 20,000, 30,000, in my case, the 100,000 hours,
Right.
Kenny, did you ever have anyone in your life say you suck?
Yeah.
Did you ever come across somebody who said, you know what, you suck as a drummer? Motivate. And the reason I say that is Dean told the story once he was playing live and somebody walked up to him and said,
Yeah.
"You suck too," right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. But you know what? That was the kick in the butt I needed to say, I'm going to practice more.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever going to tell me that again.
Nobody ever said it the way you said it, but but they said enough to make me feel like I suck.
Wait a minute, Kenny. Here's how bad.
I didn't need them to tell me. It was like for an audition, like this was like, especially on classical music. It was like, I remember I was auditioning to go to UMass, and they wanted me to sight read on mallets, and I had never even played a marimba before. I had a vibraphone on, and he puts the music up, and I sucked. I missed every note. He goes to take the music away, and I grab it. No, he says, all right, and I try it again. He says, that's all right. No, because I sucked. I was so embarrassed, and I knew I sucked, and I didn't want to leave until I didn't suck.
Here's how bad I sucked. So this is the truth. I think I was 16 at the time. I was in a high school band or a garage band, but most of the guys in the band went to another high school. So we didn't have to hang out every day. I found out how much I sucked when they changed the practice location. I mean, didn't tell me. True story. They didn't tell me. They changed where practice was taking place. I showed up, nobody there. That's how I learned.
That's horrible.
that's called passive aggressive.
It was a defining moment. It was
Yeah, it's
horrible,
good.
but it
Yeah.
really was a defining moment. I practiced my ass off after that.
See, now, almost anybody who's great has had moments like that. Horrible moment. That's that pivotal moment, and you find out who you really are.
Was there ever a moment where you wanted to quit ever in your life? Where you're like,
Never. I'm like Michael Jordan. It just made me.
never had a moment where like things weren't going well, like maybe consistent?
Let me give you an example. I was on the ski team. I was a 3-letterman jock. I was in sophomore year. I was on a varsity sport, but we didn't have a lot of money, and I had shit skis. I'm like, my event, the slalom was not my strong point. Anyway, I'm like coming down the course there was so much ice on the course, and I am falling out of the course and falling down. And I look over at my coach. He's on the slope, and he's going. And here's the point. I was crying inside, but I made myself finish that race. I could not pull myself off the course. I was bumping and falling and going. Probably took me 10 days to get through the course, but I got through it. And it was so embarrassing, humiliating. But I was so embarrassed. I don't know where that comes from, in my DNA or something, but I finished, and I sucked, but I finished, which is, wow, I look back and that's badass that I finished. I went for it. Embarrassed. Everyone's like looking like that, but I finished.
Have you ever been in a project where you had to walk away from a project because it's just not clicking right? Have you ever had that moment?
Not that I remember. I don't remember. I mean, I've left bands, but I've never, let's see. Eventually I left the Mellencamp band, but it wasn't because
I just thought maybe creatively, like a lot of times you'll get into a situation that just isn't working. But
well, here's the cool thing about when you're hired to do a record. I'm not thinking I'm only there for so long, so I'll make it work. I'll do the best I can for me. I want to sound great, and then I'll go like, whew, glad that's done. But but I get into that competition with myself. I'm going to make this song better, and I'm going to make sure I sound great. I'm never as good as I want to be, so I'm always just trying, and the reward is I've done the best I can do. And if the song's not great and the band's average, I'll just I do it. I never tell anybody that it's not happening. I just do the best I can, and I usually move on. Because I'm not there. I'm only hired for a small little bit of time. But these are great questions. I mean, yeah.
Hey, Kenny, do you remember the song story game that I brought to you in LA?
I think so. Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions from it?
I'm not going to remember probably what was on there, but go ahead.
Oh, I'm going to ask you. So I just pulled a couple cards. The first one is, what song reminds you of your first love?
Oh, now I remember that thing. Okay, what song was my first love? Probably be a Beatles song. I mean, I know one of them was Michelle, from Rubber Soul. Michelle, my belle. That's when I had a crush on a girl. Yeah, I'd say that was the first one I can remember.
Michelle? Do you remember the girl? Where's she at?
I don't know, but her name was Buffy.
Buffy. Nice. I love it. How about you, Don? Song reminds you of your first love?
That's a great question.
What do you think, Dean?
And Dean, if Dean's got one, but I'm trying to think of that time, the first crush I ever had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told you the story of practicing to ask a girl out, I listened to Hearts These Dreams over and over again.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's like that song just clicked. Like, and another one that helped me get over it was "Hard Habit to Break" by Chicago. That is one of the best heartbreak get over songs ever.
Yeah, for sure. But
Oh,
do
I
you,
remembered another one.
okay, let's hear it.
See you in September.
Uh-huh.
Was that the Happenings? Yeah, the Happenings.
Yeah,
There was a
yeah.
girl that I met at Cape Cod. And I fell in love with her, and we were listening to that song and we danced kind of on the beach. I don't know. I was young. See you in September.
I don't know if it's my first. It's definitely one of my first, and it's intense. And actually, it's a funny story here. So it was Foreigners, Waiting for a Girl Like You. And when I was sharing this story on Sirius XM about a year ago, talking about how I remember writing this little note. And what I did is I took the first verse of that song and I wrote in the note and gave it to the girl that I liked. And that was my little love note. She heard me and reached out.
Oh, the radio.
I not talked to her for well over 30 years. It was the craziest thing.
Looking too hard, I'm waiting too long. That's the first line, right? Or
Yes.
so
Well, I got to perform that with
Lou Graham.
yeah, right. Hey, listen, you guys,
Yeah, you got to go.
gotta go because it's almost 10. I gotta start my Sammy Hagar, Van Halen, and some Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, because I'm going out with Joe Satriani and Steve Vai June and July in Europe, and they're both in the same band.
Can I ask you, are you learning Love Comes Walking In? Because I love that song so much. It's on 50/50. It's the ballad.
Think I have it. It's been put into the B list because we can only play 75 minutes in Vegas.
My God, I died hearing that song.
The songs that we're not doing could be a whole show.
As always, appreciate the time, Kenny.
Man, thank you guys. All right, man. Well, you know what? Hopefully we'll see you out there somewhere.